What if the biggest enemy in your house was only a reflection?
In the busy city of Lagos, a peaceful couple bought a dog named Miles. But what happened next turned their quiet home into a battlefield of confusion. In the busy and beautiful city of Lagos, where cars moved like restless rivers and traders shouted loudly in crowded markets, there lived a married couple named Mr. Adewale and Mrs. Ronke Adewale, both in their early 40s and well respected in their neighborhood because of their calm nature and honest way of living. They had been married for many years, and although they had achieved many things in life through patience and hard work, their home often felt quiet and empty after long days of work. Mr. Adewale worked as a building contractor who supervised construction sites across different parts of Lagos, while his wife Ronke managed a small but successful fabric shop in Balogun Market, and every evening they returned home tired but grateful for the life they had built together. Even though they loved each other deeply and had many friends around them, they sometimes felt that something small but special was missing inside their house. One Sunday afternoon, after returning from church and sitting quietly in their living room, Ronke gently suggested that they should get a dog to keep them company and bring more life into their home. And although her husband laughed at first and pretended not to take the idea seriously, he later admitted that having a dog might truly make their evenings more joyful and less silent. The following weekend, the couple visited a well-known breeder on the mainland side of Lagos, and after carefully looking at several dogs of different sizes and colors, their eyes stopped on a beautiful black and white dog with bright eyes that seemed to shine with intelligence and curiosity. The dog was calm but observant, and whenever Mr. Adewale moved slightly, the dog followed him with steady attention as if trying to understand who he was. They decided to name the dog Miles because they said his eyes looked like he had traveled many miles in his thoughts even before leaving the breeder's house. When they brought Miles home, the house suddenly felt alive in a way it had not felt in many years, because his soft footsteps on the tiled floor and the gentle sound of his tail hitting the furniture filled the rooms with movement and warmth. Ronke prepared a special place for him near the sitting room, laying a clean mat and placing bowls for water and food, while Mr. Adewale proudly told his neighbors that their home now had a new member who would guard and brighten their evenings. Everything seemed peaceful during the first few days, and Miles behaved well as he explored every corner of the house with careful steps and quiet curiosity, until one afternoon when he walked into the master bedroom and noticed something unusual standing against the wall. It was a tall mirror that Mrs. Ronke had bought many years ago, and it reflected almost the entire room with perfect clarity. But to Miles, who had never truly seen himself in such a clear reflection before, it appeared as though another dog had suddenly appeared inside the room without permission. He froze at first, staring at the other dog with wide eyes and stiff posture, and then he let out a loud bark that echoed through the house because he believed that a stranger had entered his territory. The reflection barked back at him in perfect timing, which made Miles even more angry and confused. From that moment, the peace of the house slowly began to change. Every time Miles passed near the bedroom or caught even a small reflection of himself in glass or polished surfaces, he reacted with suspicion and loud barking, believing strongly that another dog was challenging him inside his own home. The louder he barked, the louder the other dog barked back, and this endless battle began to disturb the calm life Mr. and Mrs. Adewale once enjoyed. Neighbors started asking questions about why their dogs seemed to be fighting invisible enemies inside the house, and Mr. Adewale felt embarrassed explaining that the problem was simply a mirror that confused their pet. Ronke tried covering the mirror with cloth during the day, but whenever the cloth shifted or light touched it in a way that showed reflection, Miles would rush toward it again with determination. The couple realized that this was no small issue because their once peaceful evenings were now filled with sharp barking that made conversation difficult and sleep uncomfortable. Concerned about the growing situation, Mr. Adewale invited his close friend, Dr. Bamidele, who was a veterinary doctor in his late 30s, to visit their home and observe the strange behavior. When Dr. Bamidele watched Miles bark aggressively at his own reflection, he could not help but smile gently before explaining that some dogs do not immediately understand mirrors because they depend more on scent than sight to recognize others. He advised the couple to patiently train Miles by slowly introducing him to the mirror in a controlled way. allowing him to see and calm down while reassuring him with soft voices so that he would gradually understand that the image was not an enemy, but simply himself. Although the process required patience and consistency, the couple agreed to follow the doctor's advice carefully, because they did not want frustration to replace the love they felt for their dog. Over the next few weeks, Ronke would stand beside Miles near the mirror and speak softly while gently holding his collar, allowing him to observe his reflection without feeling threatened. At first he barked nervously, but as days passed, his barking reduced into low growls and eventually into silent observation, as if his mind was slowly learning a new truth. Mr. Adderwale also played with Miles in front of the mirror, showing him that when he moved, the other dog moved the same way, and when he sat, the other one also sat, and little by little the confusion inside Miles began to fade into understanding. The loud battles disappeared, and in their place came quiet moments where Miles would stand calmly before the mirror, tilting his head slightly as though finally accepting that there was never another dog in the room. Life returned to normal in the Adderwale household, and the once troublesome mirror became just another piece of furniture inside the bedroom. Miles no longer barked at his reflection because he had learned through patience and guidance that what he feared was not an enemy, but simply himself. One evening, as Mr. and Mrs. Adderwale sat together watching Miles sleep peacefully on the floor, Ronke softly said that sometimes human beings are not different from dogs, because they too fight shadows and reflections without understanding what they truly see. Her husband nodded slowly and said that fear often grows when there is no understanding, and that patience and calm teaching can solve many problems that anger cannot fix. And so, in a small home in Lagos, a black and white dog named Miles unknowingly taught two adults a quiet lesson about fear, misunderstanding, and the power of reflection. Not only in mirrors, but in life itself. The mirror was never the problem. The fear was, what lesson did this simple dog teach us about life? Stay tuned for more stories that touch the heart. After that peaceful evening, when Miles finally slept without barking at his reflection, life in the Adderwale household did not simply return to normal as if nothing had happened, because something inside both Mr. Adderwale and his wife had quietly changed in a way they did not fully understand at first. The mirror that once caused noise and frustration now stood silently in the bedroom, but whenever either of them passed by it, they remembered how easily fear can grow when understanding is absent. Days turned into weeks, and Miles continued to move freely around the house without reacting to the mirror, which made the couple feel proud not only of their dog's growth, but also of their own patience. They began to notice that Miles had become calmer in other ways too, because the same dog who once barked loudly at his reflection now responded more gently even to unexpected sounds from outside the gate. One evening, after returning from work, Mr. Adderwale sat quietly in the sitting room while watching Miles lie peacefully near the door, and he began to think about his own behavior at his construction sites, especially the times when he reacted quickly in anger toward workers without fully understanding what had happened. He remembered moments when he had shouted loudly over small mistakes, only to later realize that the problem was not as serious as he had first imagined. Ronke also found herself reflecting deeply while arranging fabrics in her shop at Balogun Market, because she remembered how she sometimes assumed that certain customers were disrespectful or dishonest without giving them the chance to explain themselves clearly. The story of Miles and the mirror slowly became more than just a funny experience about a dog, because it began to shine light on areas of their own lives that needed patience and careful listening. One Saturday afternoon, while they were both at home, a neighbor named Mr. Okonkwo, a retired civil servant in his late 50s, visited them and sat down for a long conversation about life in Lagos and the pressures that come with work and responsibility. During their discussion, Mr. Adderwale shared the story of Miles and the mirror, and as he explained how the dog once fought his own reflection, Mr. Okonkwo smiled slowly and said that human beings often do the same thing when they refuse to confront their own fears and weaknesses. The conversation became deep and thoughtful, because each of them began sharing personal experiences about misunderstandings that had caused unnecessary conflicts in the past. They realized that many disagreements between adults, whether in marriage, business, or friendship, begin when someone reacts to what they think they see without confirming the truth calmly. Later that night, after their neighbor had left, Ronke stood before the mirror quietly and looked at her own reflection. Not with fear like Miles once did, but with honest self-examination. She asked herself whether there were attitudes she needed to change, whether there were harsh words she needed to reduce, and whether there were assumptions she needed to let go of in order to grow wiser. Mr. Adderwell joined her and gently placed his hand on her shoulder, and together they spoke openly about ways they could improve their communication, promising that they would try to listen more carefully before reacting in anger. The mirror that once caused barking now became a silent witness to their decision to become better versions of themselves. As months passed, the story of Miles slowly spread among their friends and neighbors, not because of the barking itself, but because of the lesson attached to it. Some people laughed at first when they heard that a dog once fought his own reflection, but when they heard how the couple handled the situation with patience instead of punishment, they began to see the deeper meaning behind it. Miles continued to live peacefully in the house, and sometimes he would stand briefly before the mirror, not to bark, but as if remembering the confusion he once felt. Instead of reacting, he would simply wag his tail and walk away calmly, which always made Ronky smile. One quiet evening, while heavy rain fell outside and the sound of thunder rolled across the sky, the couple sat together reflecting on how much their home had changed since Miles entered their lives. They realized that the dog they bought to reduce loneliness had ended up teaching them lessons about fear, anger, patience, and self-awareness. Mr. Adderwell spoke slowly and said that perhaps life places mirrors before every adult at different times, sometimes in the form of difficult people, unexpected challenges, or personal failures, and the way one responds determines whether growth will follow or unnecessary battles will continue. Ronky agreed and added that wisdom does not come from avoiding mirrors, but from standing before them honestly, without running away or attacking what we see. From that day forward, the Adderwell household became known not just as the home with the black and white dog, but as a place where calm conversation replaced quick anger and understanding replaced loud reaction. The mirror remained in its position, reflecting the room exactly as it was, but now it also reflected the quiet maturity that had grown inside the hearts of two adults who were willing to learn from a simple situation. And so, in the busy city of Lagos, where noise often fills the streets and people rush without pause, there stood a home where a dog named Miles once barked at his own reflection, but later found peace, and in doing so reminded his owners that sometimes the greatest victory in life is not defeating an enemy, but understanding oneself. The house is quiet now. Miles no longer barks at the mirror. The bedroom is peaceful. The nights are calm. Mr. and Mrs. Adderwell believe the storm has passed. They believe the lesson has been learned. They believe life can now return to normal. But sometimes, when a house becomes too quiet, it is not because the trouble is gone. It is because something bigger is approaching. In the busy city of Lagos, where the streets never truly sleep and destiny can change in a single phone call, peace can be very fragile. One moment you are laughing in your sitting room, watching your dog rest peacefully on the floor, and the next moment, everything shifts. They learned how to face reflection. They learned how to control fear. They learned patience. But life does not only test us with reflections. Sometimes it tests us with reality. And reality does not disappear when you bark at it. Reality knocks. Reality waits. Reality enters without asking permission. What happens when the next challenge is not a shadow in the mirror, but a situation that cannot be ignored? What happens when the calm heart of a home is shaken in a way no one expected? What happens when the lesson of patience must now be proven under pressure? Because somewhere in Lagos, something is already moving. A decision is about to be made. A misunderstanding is about to grow. A moment is about to arrive that will test their marriage, their wisdom, and everything they thought they understood about peace. And this time, there will be no mirror to blame. The barking has stopped. But the real story is just beginning. Are they truly ready for what is coming next? He faced his reflection and won. They found patience and grew stronger. But what happens when the next battle is not in the mirror, but in real life? Get ready. The story is far from over. Part 2 will reveal everything. If this story touched you, if it made you reflect, if it made you think about your own mirrors in life, then make sure you subscribe to Afri Tales by John, where powerful Nigerian stories come alive with lessons, emotion, and unforgettable twists. Subscribe now so you don't miss what happens next to Miles and the Adderwale family. The calm is here tonight, but the storm is coming.